What if the people closest to you vanish without explanation? Imagine them there one day, gone the next. No trace, no clues left. These unsolved disappearances are the things of nightmares, and today, we'll be delving into 3 bizarre cases that remain complete mysteries. In particular, the strangest account of the 3 comes last, involving a geologist in the Wyoming wilderness. We'll journey across decades, trying to unravel what truly happened, from baffling theories to details that don't add up. These cases will bring you face to face with the unknown, and it is utterly terrifying. But before we continue, we'd like you guys to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell icon so you do not miss out on any amazing and entertaining content. I want to note that viewer discretion is advised. Our first case is the chilling story of how a commercial airliner vanished without a trace, mid-flight, leaving behind distraught families desperate for answers. Our story begins in a repair hangar in Pensacola, Florida, the hometown of aircraft mechanic Ben Charles Padilla Jr. Ben was a family man, a skilled professional trained in engine repair and certified as a commercial pilot. By all accounts, he had no reason to disappear and leave his loved ones behind. Yet in May 2003, that is precisely what happened. Ben, along with an assistant mechanic named John Mutantu, embarked on what should have been a routine job, servicing an older Boeing 727 stuck on the tarmac of Quatro de Feverio International Airport in Angola, Africa. They were to repair it and ready it for a ferry flight to a new owner, but they would never make it to their destination. To understand this mystery, we must delve into the plane's shadowy past. Originally flown by American Airlines, it had been sold and converted into a fuel tanker to supply remote African mines. Yet the Angolan Civil War made this enterprise fail, and the plane sat abandoned on the tarmac, accruing massive parking fees. So, here's this abandoned Boeing 727 sitting on the tarmac at the Quatro de Feverio airport in the capital Luanda, having racked up over $4 million in unpaid parking and housing fees. The owner, a Miami-based company by the name Aerospace Sales and Leasing, brought in Ben Padilla to get it airworthy so it could be flown out of the country. But when Ben arrived, the situation was dire. The plane had been stripped of parts and looked barely salvageable. Ben was a U.S. citizen working for Air Gemini and seemed like an upright man. No criminal history, and by all accounts, he was a stand-up guy. But then it happened. On May 25, 2003, Ben was at Quatro de Feverio working on the plane with another Air Gemini employee named John Mutantu. The sun was starting to set when somewhere between 5 to 6 p.m., the old Boeing suddenly started and proceeded to become airborne. The control tower scrambled to reach the aircraft before it began rolling down the taxiway without any clearance or communication. This was highly irregular and very concerning. The tower helplessly watched as the unlit plane erratically stumbled onto the runway and somehow managed to lift off into the darkening African sky. Its lights were off, the transponder too. Everything about this was dangerous and strange. As it banked east toward Burkina Faso, the last radio call came from the aircraft, bizarrely requesting permission to land in the Seychelles Islands. But as suddenly as it had appeared, the voice went silent, and the plane, carrying Ben and John, was never heard from again. Theories on what happened have run rampant ever since. Now, Ben was a certified mechanic, engineer, and pilot, but never trained on flying the colossal Boeing 727. The 727 requires a third person to fly the plane, and it only had been Ben and John on it, and John was just a mechanic too, so there's no way either guy was qualified to handle that plane. Even creepier, Ben's own family is convinced he'd never have taken off willingly. In fact, he told his brother he was worried about the 727 maybe getting hijacked by African militants, said he'd rather crash the plane than let terrorists commandeer it. Yet, this thing lifted off without clearance and bumbled down the taxiway with its lights off. The FBI seemed real eager to wash their hands of this bizarre and mysterious case. As of 2005, they'd washed out the whole investigation. Ben was soon declared dead, and they closed the case, and the N844AA became just another file gathering dust in a basement cabinet. But Mari Joseph, president of the firm Aerospace Sales, thinks this was 100% terrorism. that somebody must have hijacked this plane and made off into the night with it. But here's the kicker. U.S. authorities speculated that Joseph's track record of engaging in accounting fraud might have been a contributing factor. They entertained the possibility that the theft of the plane could be linked to a business rivalry or could be originated as part of a fraudulent scheme, maybe an insurance job to recoup his losses. Anyway, here we are 20 plus years later and still no sign of Ben, his partner, and the plane. Not even a piece of metal or drop of fuel has ever been discovered. And in case you were wondering, at takeoff, the plane was topped off with a full payload of fuel, giving it a range of about 2,400 kilometers. So that's the long tale of Ben Charles Padilla's disappearance. Was it terrorism, simple hijacking, some mechanical failure or accidental crash landing, or deliberate financial sham gone wrong? Over 2 decades later, and the riddle of this mysterious plane remains unsolved. Our next case has puzzled me for years. Maybe you've heard bits and pieces about it, but let me lay out the whole story for you. It's September 14, 2007. 14-year-old Andrew Gosden wakes up in his cozy family home in Balby, a suburb of Doncaster, South Yorkshire, England. He's a model student at a Catholic high school. Being in the gifted program, he was expected to ace his upcoming GCSE exam, which is a standardized academic qualification in the United Kingdom, typically taken by students aged 14 to 16. Teachers describe him as mature beyond his years, although a bit shy and quiet. But still, Andrew was a happy and stable kid. No signs of depression or bullying as far as anyone can tell. Now, the day before, September 13th, had been perfectly normal by all accounts. Andrew hung out with his dad after school, working on a jigsaw puzzle of all things. Later, he watched some comedy shows on the TV with his mom, typical family stuff. But the morning of the 14th was different. Andrew was somehow off, irritable and hard to rouse from bed, which was apparently unusual for the punctual kid. Still, he heads off to school as normal and was spotted walking through the local park towards his bus stop. This is where things really start to get weird. Andrew makes a sudden detour to a nearby local garage. He withdraws 200 pounds from his bank account, nearly every last penny to his name. Then he is caught on CCTV on his way back home, uniform and all. At home, Andrew changes out of his school clothes and into a black Slipknot band t-shirt and jeans. He packs his wallet, house keys, PSP console, but leaves his charger and over 100 pounds in birthday money untouched. No apparent rush or signs of distress though. Oh, and no coat or sweatshirt either, despite the autumn season, which was odd. Things were extremely unusual. Finally, at 8:30 a.m., Andrew was spotted on camera heading back out of his neighborhood into the opposite direction of school. Turns out, he then pops up at Doncaster railway station and buys a one-way ticket to London for £31. When the ticket seller suggests a return would barely cost more, Andrew refuses. At 9:35 a.m., Andrew is seen boarding the train to London's King's Cross station alone. A passenger later said he seemed quiet and distracted, just playing his PSP the whole ride. Meanwhile, back in Doncaster, Andrew's school realizes he's not in class and calls his parents, or so they think. Turns out they dialed the wrong number, and his family, assuming Andrew is either playing video games in the basement or off studying, sits down for a nice dinner without him. It's not until around 7 p.m. that night, when Andrew still hasn't shown up, that panic starts to set in with them. Maybe he got hurt on the walk to school? His parents started to rationalize what happened. Maybe he's at a friend's house, they thought. Only then do they learn that Andrew never even made it to school that day. Within hours, his family's scouring Doncaster, heading out missing person flyers to no avail. The plot thickens when police confirm 3 days later that Andrew did indeed travel to London by train. They search areas of London where the Gosdens have relatives, but nothing. It takes the cops weeks before reviewing King's Cross CCTV footage again and finally spotting Andrew leaving the station about 25 minutes after his arrival. That image of 14-year-old Andrew walking out of those doors on September 14, 2007 is the last known sighting of him to this day. Andrew almost seems to have vanished into thin air basically. In the months and years since, despite tireless efforts by the broken Gosden family, the mystery only deepens. Why London? Why that day? Was he meeting someone? And if so, who? Or did Andrew plan to reinvent himself, start over alone as someone else? His parents insist Andrew wasn't streetwise or worldly enough to have pulled this off himself, that he must have been lured to London by an online predator. But his family swears Andrew never used social media or showed interest in connecting with strangers online. As far as they knew, he didn't even have an email address. Police take away school and library computers Andrew may have accessed, even his game consoles. Forensic investigations turn up nothing. There's no digital footprint, no electronic communications, no computer activity pointing to planning a disappearance. The family has criticized police for not requesting CCTV footage right away to track Andrew's path beyond King's Cross that first day. But at this point, over 15 years later, what could that footage possibly show? Surely any trail is ice cold. Even possible sightings reported over the years have crumbled under scrutiny. It's now 2024 and Andrew Gosden's unsolved disappearance remains an open wound for British authorities. Perhaps Andrew himself will miraculously resurface with some wild explanation. It's happened before in other high-profile cases, but with no sightings and not one legitimate tip called in for over 15 years now, I sadly have my doubts. What do you think? Will Andrew Gosden ever be found safe or at least get justice served? Or are the tragic events of September 14, 2007 doomed to haunt Andrew's legacy forever? Our last case sounds like something straight out of a crime novel. Paul Hibbard, a geologist from Meade, Colorado, seemingly disappeared without a trace while on a work trip near Gillette, Wyoming back in 1976. Over 45 years later, his fate remains shrouded in mystery and conjecture. For 2 years, Hibbard worked for Burge Exploration and was said to be a reliable and model employee by many there. Just a week prior to his disappearance, Hibbard received a strange call requesting he bring his specialized geological exploration van to the Gillette area for a job. Suspicious about the call's legitimacy, Hibbard asked his boss, who confirmed nobody from their company needed assistance there. Yet, curiously, Hibbard ended up traveling to that very same region shortly thereafter. On May 28, 1976, Hibbard was said to have been on a routine geological survey when he and his truck, which was used to locate minerals and contained $30,000 of radioactive exploration equipment, simply vanished. His boss floated the theory that he may have been kidnapped and forced to illegally scout mineral deposits for another company. After all, Hibbard's expertise and technological knowledge would have been invaluable in the right criminal circles. 2 months passed without a trace of Hibbard or most of his gear. Then police uncovered nearly $10,000 of his equipment in the possession of one Joseph Dowdy, who was arrested and charged with grand larceny. Under questioning, however, Dowdy provided no useful information regarding Hibbard's fate. The next break in the case came about a year later when Hibbard's abandoned work truck turned up just northwest of the Wyoming town of Upton. An anonymous caller tipped police to the location. Expecting clues, investigators were instead met with a grisly sight. The interior soaked in blood, including the seats and door panels. Forensics showed a significant volume had pooled inside, but DNA testing was still years away. The FBI attempted to type the blood, but Hibbard's blood type was unfortunately unknown. Over 45 years later, and the puzzle of Paul Hibbard's bizarre vanishing remains unsolved, with no answers on record about the fate of this young and supposedly responsible man. Was he kidnapped for his expertise like theorized early on? Killed savagely inside his own van that day? Did he engineer his own disappearance and fake death? Or was it something far more sinister that led to all that blood left behind? We'll probably never know. But I don't know about you, but something about this case just feels eerie to me in the worst way. What are your thoughts on it? Well, there you have it. 3 bizarre and disturbing cases of people seeming to have vanished into thin air. If you found this series of mysteries intriguing or have your own theories on what occurred, don't hesitate to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also, give this video a like, be sure to subscribe for more interesting and mysterious content, and ring that bell so you are first to know whenever a new video drops. See you in the next one.